What's up, guys? It's time to review sort of a long-lost slasher from the early 90s, Popcorn, that's finally available on Shudder, at least, so you can watch it, because I don't even think this has like a Blu-ray release. Correct me if I'm wrong, but anyway, yeah, let's review Popcorn. Popcorn stars Jill Schoelen, Tom Villard, and is directed by Mark Harrier and Alan Ormsby, who is uncredited, but I'm going to give him credit. What's up, guys? Boy, do I love Shudder, and this is not a Shudder promo. Anytime I get a chance to promote Shudder, I do, because us horror fans, we like to have a streaming service for us that just gives you nothing but 100% straight up horror. A lot of deep cuts that you would never find on any other streaming service. So yeah, and I just reviewed The Sadness, but another movie, Popcorn, kind of cropped up on there, and I was like, oh my God, I've been wanting to see Popcorn for ages. I think I might have saw it when it first came out back in '91.
Smoke. Someone takes her hand. She's running. The same man comes towards her.
I'm in a dream.
I honestly don't remember, but I will tell you, after watching it, I definitely don't remember. I didn't remember a single frame of this movie. So it was kind of nice. It was like going into a brand new movie. And you might hear rain in the background because it's pouring right now, and thundering. So anyway, first off, let's give you a quick plot synopsis. Popcorn is about this group of film students that form this horror-thon. They rent out this movie theater, and they're basically showing like student horror films. And all the movies that they're watching, for some reason, are like blue. And I think that's just a storytelling decision in this movie to differentiate between the really bad movies and reality, what's going on. And I'm just saying really bad movies, what they watch on the movie screen, because everything that's on the screen that they're watching is pretty much useless. It doesn't really add anything to the plot, except for the fact that it's a movie that they're watching. But what they're watching is almost kind of annoying when you see it, okay? And I hate to jump into the cons, but I think you can kind of see where I'm going with this review. Now, Jill Schoelen, who I just reviewed When a Stranger Calls Back, loved her in that movie, and she's probably the best thing about this movie, for sure. She was kind of like a B-movie horror queen, horror goddess back then in the early 90s. But I think one thing that hurt her was the early 90s. This was a really bad period for horror movies, but especially like slasher movies. Yeah, you had like Silence of the Lambs, and you had some good movies that would pop up here and there. But for the most part, people weren't singing slasher kumbaya in the early 90s. Luckily, Scream came around and gave a much needed jolt to the genre. But Jill plays Maggie, and she is having these dreams at the beginning of the movie. She's like seeing this event, this horrible nightmare play out in her mind. And every time she wakes up, she wants to write it down. And that's kind of the movie that she wants to see. So then fast forward to when they're actually at the horror-thon, one of the movies is her dream. And so that is kind of interesting. She's like, oh my God, why am I seeing my dream up there? So there is this killer that's in her dreams that presents himself in this movie. And so it ties into her family without spoiling anything, because I think a lot of you probably haven't seen Popcorn. So I'm not going to really go into any spoilers, and if I do, if I feel like I need to, then I'll give you a warning, okay? Actually, I do think I need to, okay? But we'll get to that part, all right? So everything up until to the warning, it will be non-spoiler type stuff, because I definitely want to talk about the last act of this movie. Now, Dee Wallace is actually in this movie, and it's nice to see Dee Wallace pop up from time to time. She's quite younger in this too, 91. I think she's destined to always play the mom, because she plays Jill Schoelen's mother in this. Now, one interesting thing about this, if I'm jumping into some pros here, it is a slasher. I do like how when they're watching these movies, they're trying to do this hyper-realism, I think like Electrovision, like when there's a scene of electrocution on the screen, the audience will feel like a shock. They have this today too. I can't remember what it's called, that technology, but yeah, they have that in movie theaters too. So this kind of is a precursor to that. But there's this scene with these like giant bugs, and then all of a sudden this bug comes. So you can take that stuff and the killer himself can kind of use that. Also, it was nice to see Tom Villard in this movie. Tom Villard was in One Crazy Summer, and he's, Heartbreak Ridge with Clint Eastwood. I remember seeing him a lot back in like the 80s. Sadly, he died of AIDS a couple years after this movie came out, but I don't think he told them that he had AIDS when he started doing this movie. And one more thing I do like about it is in the last act, without going into any spoilers, there is some like mask making practical effects. You know in Mission Impossible 1996 when they have those rubberish type masks that they can put on and they miraculously look like another character? There's a lot of that in this movie. And I like how they worked around it, so it's all practical, and it's pretty effective, actually. One thing that this movie did was, instead of trying to create someone else's face, they actually use an actor's face, and then they kind of work around it, so it looks like it's not the real actor, it's like an actor mask. But we know it's not. Now let's jump to the cons. I think there's a reason why this movie was forgotten, and it might be one of the reasons why we can never get some really good slasher movies in the early 90s. There's a lot of aspects to this that feel kind of lower budget. The music in it feels like they couldn't afford, like top tier. So, you get a lot of that B-level type stuff. And it just comes off as really cheesy. I don't think the script is the best. I don't think the dialogue is great in this. And don't get me wrong, guys, I love, those cheesy 80s slashers that have cheesy dialogue like nobody's business. But I think there's a fine line there, and you have to ride that line because there's so much charm in a lot of those 80s Friday the 13th movies. And, I was just talking about this in my D-Watch. They're literally just talking about getting laid. That's all they want to do. But for some reason, you're captivated with them. You like watching them stumble and fall along. Whereas this, there's no charm to the dialogue. It really feels like they're just trying to work their way through the story. So when you do have this like big reveal at the end, you don't really care, just because everything that's led up to that just feels, I guess, scripted. It doesn't feel natural, it doesn't feel real. So there's no like shock value, even though that's what they're going for. And next thing, let's start talking about a little bit more spoilerish type stuff. So if you don't want to know anything, I'd probably get out of here now, okay? Let's talk about something I call the obvious slasher. Tom Villard, it's revealed that he's the killer in this movie. He happened to be one of the children from Maggie's past, because in the past, this guy, Lanyard Gates, he was a filmmaker, he was panned by critics, he was pissed off, so he basically wanted to kill everybody in the audience in his last movie, which was going to be called Possessor, which is funny because now we have a movie called Possessor. So Tom Villard's character, Toby, he happened to be one of the kids in the audience, and him and his mother were killed. So for some reason, he's taking it out on the victim, which is kind of stupid and silly. But they try so hard throughout the movie to not make you think that it's Tom Villard, that you guess that it's Tom Villard. Like early on, I'm like, I bet he's the killer. I just had a feeling that he was the killer just by the way he was acting when certain things would happen. And usually the way he's acting, if this wasn't an obvious slasher, then it wouldn't be him. It goes the other way. They go out of their way to try to veer you away from him nonchalantly, but you end up landing right on him. And the prosthetic makeup that they use on him at the end with the yellow eyes and everything, it is kind of creepy. He does have, this movie kind of reminded me of Bad Dreams. Remember that movie, how the killer looked? He had a burn face, looked like Freddy Krueger. I mean, you could almost do a top 10 burn killers movie at this point, because you got Cropsey, you got this guy, you got the guy from Bad Dreams, and of course you got the king, Freddy Krueger. Probably a few more. But honestly, at the end of the day, the movie's not really good. It's just hard to get through. It's not a memorable slasher. The only really charming thing about it is Jill Schoelen. She can't not be charming. So for that, I'm going to give it a low humdrum, okay? Almost a 2 hours lost, but I didn't have a bad time watching it, if that makes sense, all right? So let me know your thoughts on Popcorn in the comments. Looking forward to hearing them. Also, be sure to come over to Killer Flicks, where we talk horror all day and every day. On Fridays, we do Free for Fridays. Follow my Drumdums on my socials. Support me on Patreon. Buy me a coffee. Anyway, guys, thank you so much for watching. Have a good day. And Drumdum out.